Karl Starger, a person with dissociative identity disorder, is capable of unimaginable horrors. In order to satisfy his twisted desires, he would immerse his victims in a formalin solution and use bleach to bleach and discolor the bodies, creating a doll-like appearance. Once cleaned, the deranged individual would use iron chains threaded through iron rings on his back and utilize a motor to suspend himself at a height, creating a floating sensation. After completing his macabre ritual, Karl Starger would discard the bodies in conspicuous locations by the roadside, intentionally leaving them for the authorities to find. This was already his 7th consecutive murder, and Police Chief Peter Novak analyzed 2 possibilities: either the killer knew the police couldn't catch him, or the killer wanted to be caught. Karl Starger's inner self indeed desired to be apprehended. The reason behind this desire stems from his tragic childhood. Even playing with a doll was met with abuse from his father, who used an iron to torment him. Years of torment led Karl Starger to develop severe dissociative identity disorder. As a result, when he grew up, he could not suppress the demonic persona within him whenever he encountered women who resembled dolls on the streets. The benevolent persona of Karl Starger no longer wanted to continue this way, hence his strong desire to be captured by the authorities. As usual, Karl Starger would first use his dog, afflicted with albinism, to attract the attention of his female victims. Once they took the bait, he would unexpectedly incapacitate them from behind. However, this time, the kind persona of Karl Starger deliberately left behind a dog hair at the crime scene. Coincidentally, this dog hair became the breakthrough for the police. Testing revealed that the dog had a rare form of albinism. Combined with the local pet registration list, they quickly traced it back to Karl Starger. The police immediately took action, surrounding his residence. However, to their surprise, when they found Karl Starger, he had already collapsed on the ground. Nevertheless, they had managed to bring the disturbed killer to justice. Yet, during the process of gathering evidence, Peter Novak discovered a survivor trapped in a glass cell, still alive. Only Karl Starger knew the address, and to make matters worse, the drain switch in the glass cell was fully automated. Over the next 40 hours, the diluted formalin solution would slowly fill the entire room, causing the victim to suffocate to death in endless despair. The situation became incredibly urgent. Unfortunately, at this critical moment, the doctor who was examining Karl Starger stated that his dissociative disorder had progressed to the point of affecting his nervous system. This meant that Karl Starger would now be trapped in a perpetual dream state, unable to awaken. Peter Novak interrupted the doctor, realizing that time was running out for the victim, and vowed to spare no effort in finding the hiding place. Just as they were at an impasse, the doctor suddenly thought of a brain research institute that might have a solution. They had a brain-machine interface device that could enter a person's dreams. Although it was originally designed for treating psychological disorders in children, it was the first time it would be used on an adult. However, the situation of the victim was extremely dangerous, and the senior management of the research center unanimously agreed to initiate dream traversal, and in charge of this mission is one of them, the most outstanding performance of the psychiatrist Dr. Catherine Dean. But apparently, everyone here does not know how terrible the dream world they are going to enter next. Before entering the dream world of the psychopathic killer, there are still some preparations to be made. An operator on the side of the left arm injected Catherine Dean with a catalyst, and so on. The brain's nerve after the transfer of chromosomes was completed. The head was covered with a flexible integrated circuit screen displaying the image. The last step was to check the micro switch on the tiger's mouth of the left hand. When the operator wanted to end the dream travel, he would press it to return to reality. With everything ready, Catherine Dean entered the dream of the deranged killer through the integrated display screen on her head. At this time young Karl Starger was being baptized by Fr. The scene shifted, and Catherine Dean found herself in another layer of space, where there was a horse and a young Karl Starger who still possessed a kind personality. Why do we say he was still kind? Because just 1 second before the imminent danger, young Karl Starger saved Catherine Dean. This demonstrated 2 points. First, Karl Starger was kind when he was a child, and second, his dream was twisted and terrifying. Meanwhile, in reality, the woman imprisoned by Karl Starger was on the verge of being drowned. In order to discover the hidden location and rescue the hostage, Catherine Dean needed to continue exploring. The next layer was the darkest part of Karl Starger's psyche, where he kept the 7 women he had previously murdered. The victims were all turned into horrifying dolls. Startled, Catherine Dean didn't notice someone approaching from behind. By the time she realized it, she had been brought to an ultramodern palace. Sitting on the throne was Karl Starger in his demonic persona, with iron rings connecting hundreds of meters of silk fabric behind him. He resembled an emperor of this twisted kingdom. Terrified, Catherine Dean quickly pressed the termination switch. Police Chief Peter Novak received a call and immediately rushed to the research facility. He looked at the shaken Catherine Dean and felt deeply guilty. However, the automated water filling system that trapped the victim continued to mercilessly spray water. Ironically, the unconscious Karl Starger was the only person who knew the exact location. Catherine Dean knew she couldn't stand by and do nothing, but once she entered Karl Starger's dream, she might never wake up again. Peter Novak began to play the emotional card with Catherine Dean, combined with his personal charm, and ultimately managed to persuade her. On the second attempt, the organization decided to bring Karl Starger's pet dog as an added precaution, hoping for a breakthrough. This time was different. With the guidance of the dog, Catherine Dean quickly found the young Karl Starger who still possessed a kind personality. However, During the questioning process, they accidentally broke a plate. Young Carl Starger hurriedly hid Catherine Dean in the closet, sensing that something bad was about to happen. Through the cracks in the closet door, Catherine Dean witnessed Carl Starger's father brutally abusing him, a scene so cruel it was horrifying. This incident directly contributed to Carl Starger's severe dissociative identity disorder as he grew up. Suddenly, a sound came from behind, and the scene shifted to the adult Carl Starger's first murder. However, his demonic persona had not yet awakened at this point. Catherine Dean, skilled in psychology, attempted to ask for the location of the victim, and just when success seemed within reach, Carl Starger's demonic persona awakened. Catherine Dean didn't have time to press the exit switch and was overpowered by him. The operators in the real world noticed the anomaly but couldn't forcefully end the dream traversal, as it would result in Catherine Dean being trapped in an eternal slumber. Meanwhile, the other victim was nearing the brink of drowning. In desperation, Police Chief Peter Novak decided to enter Carl Starger's dream as well. It was the first time in history that 3 individuals were connected through a brain-machine interface. Despite the risks, Peter Novak put on the neurolinking equipment, and once the operator covered his head with the flexible integrated circuit screen, his brainwaves were rapidly converted into transmission signals. To his surprise, Peter Novak found himself inside the twisted dream of the serial killer Carl Starger. There, he encountered Catherine Dean, but she appeared abnormal, like a puppet devoid of autonomy. Just as Peter Novak realized something was wrong, he was struck unconscious by a monster that suddenly appeared behind him. It turned out to be Carl Starger in his demonic persona. Catherine Dean had been mentally controlled, and Peter Novak could only watch helplessly as he was mutilated. However, at the critical moment, he managed to awaken Catherine Dean's consciousness, and she regained control. Catherine Dean grabbed a spike and ruthlessly pierced Carl Starger's body. Taking advantage of his demonic persona's momentary weakness, they both entered another layer of space, where they encountered the kind persona of young Carl Starger. In the middle of this space was a water tank, the location where the 8th victim was held captive. Observant Peter Novak noticed a familiar symbol from outside the box. It belonged to a custom carving company called The Sculptor. However, Carl Starger had fully reverted to darkness and took away his younger self. This meant that Carl Starger had completely succumbed to his demonic persona. Nevertheless, Peter Novak had obtained a valuable clue. They quickly pressed the termination switch and returned to reality. Through the investigation of their colleagues, they discovered the exact location of the customization company named The Sculptor in Carl Starger's basement. Following this lead, the police found that Carl Starger was the only one who had ordered a large water tank in recent years. Based on the delivery address from that time, Peter Novak located the hiding place just 1 second before the victim was about to be drowned and successfully broke the glass. I thought saving the victim would be the end of the story, but Catherine Dean wants to save Carl Starger, who was a child at the time. When the operators were not paying attention, she secretly modified the dream traversal program, reversing the roles of the 2 individuals. Catherine Dean prepared to allow Carl Starger to enter her dream. When she was ready, there was a flash of white light, and a holy, flawless and pure world appeared, where Catherine Dean was like an angelic Madonna. She opened her arms to little Carl Starger, who was still in the good personality, and tried to redeem his lost life. But in the next conversation, Carl Stag in his demonic personality turned out to be in Catherine Dean's dream, and in her guise of a cold warrior woman, she immobilized Carl Stag with a crossbow and arrows and then drew her sword to end his life. But Carl Starger and the demon were coexisting and both would die at the same time. Eventually, Kathleen Dean completed Carl Stag's unfinished baptismal rite as a child, ridding him of his demonic nature and putting an end to his sinful life. And after the rite was completed, Carl Starger's body in reality stopped breathing. The end of a man's body doesn't mean death. Only the moment his soul is extinguished does it mean total destruction. The movie is called Invasion of the Cell. It's a 2000 movie and television production, but it's surrealistic and the images are still shocking to watch today.